Okay, thank you so much. Well, I'm excited about this presentation here. There's over 5,000 people that are signed up for this, people from all over the world. And so this is awesome. I mean, I'm really excited about people looking to take back control of their health. And fasting is one of the simplest, easiest tools that you can use to really impact, jumpstart your health. If you're looking to lose weight, if you're looking to improve your energy levels, your brain function, your gut health, if you're looking to reduce inflammation in your body, using some sort of fasting strategy. I'm going to talk about several fasting strategies today can be incredibly beneficial for your life and your health. And I know for myself, it's been life transforming. You see, back when I was in my early 20s, I was a personal trainer and I looked really, really fit on the outside, but I was actually very sick on the inside and I developed irritable bowel syndrome. And I would go from sitting to standing and I would be really dizzy. I had orthostatic hypotension. I had chronic constipation, but sometimes I would have diarrhea. I would have cramping on a regular basis. And I ended up losing about 30 pounds of muscle, even though I was trying to eat as much as I could. I was trying to exercise. And what I found was as I made lifestyle changes, one of the things that helped was actually an intermittent fasting strategy. And I didn't even know the term. I just noticed that I felt better when I, in a sense, condensed my eating window when I ate during certain periods and I would fast for a good portion of the day and just really hydrate my body well. And I was able to heal the irritable bowel. I was able to put the weight back on, had great energy, mental clarity. I went from a struggling student to the top of my class. In fact, I was at the top of my class finishing my undergrad, my last year in undergrad, as I was healing. And then I was top of my class in graduate school, where I went on to become a doctor of chiropractic and a doctor of natural medicine, got a master's degree in sports nutrition as well. And I couldn't have done it without an intermittent fasting lifestyle because intermittent fasting completely transformed my mitochondria and my brain. So your brain, mitochondria are what produce all the energy in all your cells. And particularly the most dense areas where you have mitochondria are in your brain. And so as I started to heal, I went from having brain fog, attention deficit disorder, to actually now being able to think sharply and quickly and having great memory, great retention. I mean, I saw my physiology transform in really as little as like a 3 to 6 month period as I started implementing this. And I noticed big differences really within the first week or two. And I've gone on to establish a large natural health clinic in the Atlanta, Georgia area, which I later sold. But as I was seeing clients for about 12 years, I used intermittent fasting as well as what we're going to talk about today, fasting mimicking diets, to help people transform their physiology. We saw many different individuals heal from chronic diseases, significantly improve their energy, their brain function, get rid of dangerous inflammatory visceral fat, improve their skin texture. I mean, people that you would see in like a 6 month period of time, that the skin in their face looked like it was 10, 15 years younger after following these programs for roughly, 3 to 6 months of time. It's amazing what happens. I tell people, if you take really good care of your body, you follow the kind of cellular rejuvenation strategies that I'm going to talk about today, you can almost entirely be a new cellular structure within the course of a year. I mean, all the cells will have greater stress resilience. You'll have gotten rid of old, damaged, senescent cells. We're going to talk a little bit about that as I go on here. And we're going to create incredible cell rejuvenation and actually take our cells and make them younger and more stress resilient. And ultimately, the greater the stress resilience of the various cells in your body, the greater your quality of life. All of us are under stress. All of our cells are constantly under stress. The key is not necessarily the stress. Of course, we want to manage that. The key is how resilient are we to stress? And the more resilience your cells have, the more stress they can handle without breaking. And that's really the goal. We want our cells to be able to handle a lot of stress and then be able to recover so they're strong and healthy. And ultimately, that's what we're going to go through a nutrition strategy utilizing fasting today to really turn on cell rejuvenation. So with that said, if you're not familiar with me, Dr. David Jockers, creator of drjockers.com, I wrote the best-selling book, The Fasting Transformation, where I go through my healing journey and also go through a whole number of ways of using intermittent, partial, and extended fasting to heal and transform your life. And I also have a great podcast. So if you're interested in more great content, you check out Dr. Jockers' Functional Nutrition Podcast. I've been on a lot of media. Here's a picture of me on Home and Family, which was one of the one of the most popular morning shows on the Hallmark Channel. And here's a picture over here of me and my family right there, my beautiful wife, Angel. We've been married for just about 9 years now. And we got married, and 6 weeks after we got married, we conceived with twin boys that you'll see there, David and Joshua. They are 8 years old now. We also have two daughters. We have Joyful, she's 5.5, and we have Shine, she's 2.5. We're actually in the process of trying to get her potty trained, and we had a success last night, which is awesome. If you've ever tried to potty train a child, you got to have a lot of patience, and you celebrate every success. And, that's really my why, is my family. I want to be at my very best. Having 4 young kids, I'm very active in their life. I coach my sons. They're great athletes. I coach them in soccer, baseball, and basketball. We're currently in basketball season right now. And I'm out there playing with them, and they're quick and they're strong. And I'm 42 now, which to some of you is very young. To some of you guys that are on here, you're like, oh, 42. I used to think 42, 40s were old, right? But ultimately, at times I can feel my age, but I want to feel great on a daily basis. And so I practice these principles so that I don't have pain, and I never experience pain these days. I have great energy, great mental clarity, and I want to be able to play with my kids on a daily basis. I want to be able to chase them around the house. I want to wrestle with them. My son likes it when I kind of pick him up and overhead press him into his bunk bed. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do that with my grandkids. And so I want you to ask first off, what is your why? What do you want the quality of your life to look like? Where do you want to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Where do you want to be 3 to 6 months from now? What do you want to look like and feel like in a year from now, right? That's really what we have to ask ourselves. And ultimately, why is that? If it's just like, hey, I just want to lose 10 pounds because I want to look better in a Speedo or in a bathing suit, that's a goal. But, I don't know if it's a big enough why. Ultimately, a mentor of mine said, you want a why that makes you cry, meaning that the why for life transformation should be so impactful to you that it brings you into an emotional state where you can literally almost cry because it's something you want so badly. I want to be 100% for my family so badly. I mean, even just talking about it right now makes me start to well up. You want a why that makes you cry, and you want to visualize that every single day. Think about that on a daily basis. And if you have that, that is going to help you overcome any sort of limiting beliefs that come into your mind or self-sabotaging behaviors that you may have that have held you back from achieving your health goals in the past. And so we all have some level of self-sabotage, that we've experienced. It's like you're trying to diet, you're trying exercise, and then you start making excuses. You're under stress, you're busy. You're like, well, I'll just, I won't follow it this one time. And then I get the gym membership, and then I don't go to the gym for a week or 2 weeks. And, it's always harder when you stop and then have to restart. Everything when it comes to your health journey, it's really about momentum. It's about a lifestyle where you're building health every single day. You're doing positive things for your health and your wellness every single day. And when you stay on and you keep your momentum moving in the right direction, it becomes easier. It's like a downhill, it's like walking downhill, as opposed to when you start and then stop and then try to pick it up a month or two later. It's like going uphill. It's hard. There's more resistance, and it's more challenging to be successful. And so ultimately, if you have a really big why that makes you cry, it's going to help you stay consistent with it. It's going to make all the things I talk about today, all the different healthy lifestyle practices that you desire to put into practice, it's going to make it a lot easier. Again, like walking downhill, you're going to have momentum that's leading you in the right direction. So today we're talking about fasting, of course, and many of you guys listened to the Fasting Summit that we just did, Fasting and Longevity Summit. We named it the Fasting and Longevity Summit because fasting ultimately is really about longevity. A lot of people do it for weight loss. I practice intermittent fasting. I've done extended fasts. I've done the fasting mimicking diet. I've never once done it to lose weight because I'm already really thin, but I've done it for longevity, for cell renewal and rejuvenation. I've done it for better energy, better mental function, less inflammation in my body. So, whatever your goals are, if you want to lose weight, great. Losing weight, in fact, I put up an Instagram post today that said if you lose 10 pounds of belly fat, and belly fat is the most inflammatory fat, we call that visceral fat. If you lose 10 pounds of that, that will actually, if you're 10 pounds overweight, right, and you lose 10 pounds, or if you're more, if you're 50 pounds overweight, you lose 10 pounds of visceral fat, that will add 10 years to your health span, not just your lifespan, but your health span. Your health span is basically the amount of years that you live where you're able to do all of your activities of daily function, have high quality of life without medications. Many people are living long, but their quality of life is very low and they're dependent upon medications for the last 15, 20 years of their life. I don't think anybody listening here wants to do that. Most people don't. I mean, most people I talk to, they want less medications. They want more energy, less pain, better brain function, right? That's what we want. So losing weight can be one way, particularly visceral fat, to really improve your longevity and your health span. But on top of that, you could see fasting, and this is all based on peer-reviewed clinical research, has been shown to dramatically improve brain health, improve cognition, memory, generation of new neurons, reduce cognitive decline, reported improvement in self-esteem and confidence, increase in mental clarity. In the blood, you get elevated blood ketones, which is a marker of fat burning, and also it helps it turns off inflammation, particularly neuroinflammation in the brain when ketones are elevated. Reduce blood glucose, insulin, and leptin. So you're more hormone sensitive, which is key. You want to be very insulin sensitive, very leptin sensitive. When you're not leptin sensitive, you have more cravings. When you're insulin resistant, you can't burn fat for fuel. You have reduced markers of inflammation and stress, things like high sensitivity C-reactive protein, for example, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, ESR. These are some of the most well-known inflammatory markers. Reduced IGF-1, which is a marker associated, when that's elevated, associated with various forms of cancer. Cardiovascular health, reduced blood pressure, total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, reduced triglycerides. So you get better at burning fat for fuel. High triglycerides is a sign you're not good at burning fat for fuel. In the liver, you have glycogen depletion, ketone production, increased insulin sensitivity, reduced lipid accumulation. That's key because one of the fastest growing conditions in our society today is something called fatty liver disease. And fatty liver disease kind of goes hand in hand with insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. And it's a very destructive condition, but fatty liver is definitely something you can heal from. Most people, if they follow good nutritional recommendations, strategies I'm talking about today, can see, marked reduction in fat accumulation in the liver. Your fat tissue, of course, you're going to lose that inflammatory visceral fat. Visceral fat's the kind of fat that surrounds your organs, right? So when you have belly fat, if you're standing and you look down, you can't see your toes, right? Because your belly is protruding and it's in the way. That's a sign you've got this excess visceral fat. Now, you can also be skinny fat. So there are some individuals that are real lean, but they have more visceral fat. But most of the time, you're going to see it as a protruding belly. And that is a huge risk factor for chronic inflammatory disease because the visceral fat itself, actually, we used to think it was just kind of an energy storage tissue, right? Like it was just storing fat. But now we realize it's actually part of the hormonal system, the endocrine system, and it releases inflammatory cytokines, which drive up systemic inflammation throughout your entire body. So it's a really big issue. In the gut, and this is, one of the reasons why I was able to heal irritable bowel by using intermittent fasting is because it increases the number of stem cells. Stem cells are your young, very stress resilient cells, and your gut lining is only one cell wall. And so when we have a lot of mechanical stress from continually eating bad foods and toxin exposure, pesticides, herbicides, that starts to create inflammation in the gut, which damages the gut lining, opens up the tight junctions, and now large undigested proteins, bacteria, bacterial end products all start to seep into the bloodstream, driving up inflammation throughout the body. And we end up with basically intestinal permeability or leaky gut. In order to heal any sort of autoimmune condition, chronic inflammatory condition, we've got to heal and seal the gut. And so fasting really it reduces the mechanical stress on the gut, but on top of that, it also will increase the number of stem cells. And also what's really cool is it increases the proportion of protective gut microbiota. You see right above the intestinal lining, you have this mucous membrane, and the mucous membrane is actually the first line of defense. It's your immune system. That's actually where 70 to 80% of your immune system is. It's in this mucous membrane that's lining your gut, your gut. There, you also have mucous membrane in your respiratory tract. And inside of that mucous membrane, you have something called secretory IgA, SIGA. And that is a very important immunoglobulin that helps to get rid of bad bacteria, that helps to stop fungal species, parasites, things like that. You really want to have a healthy mucosal membrane. And then with our gut microbiota, we have what's called primary feeders and we have secondary feeders. The primary feeders sit right above the mucosa. The secondary feeders sit right in, they're deep in the mucosa. One of them is called Akkermansia muciniphila. Akkermansia muciniphila, that its last name, muciniphila, means mucus loving. So it actually can survive by eating the intestinal mucosa, and it stimulates goblet cells to produce more hardier, thicker mucosa, more secretory IgA. So it's really key. They call it the keystone bacteria in the gut, meaning that people with optimal levels of Akkermansia muciniphila in their gut microbiome have a lower risk of autoimmune conditions and all chronic inflammatory and metabolic diseases. Now, what is Akkermansia? How do we help Akkermansia thrive? Well, Akkermansia likes polyphenols that we get from various spices, plant-based foods. It likes that, but so do the primary feeders as well. And what happens is when we're constantly eating, right? We're eating like the standard American diet, eating 6 meals a day, and oftentimes a lot of processed foods. What happens there is we're overfeeding the primary bacteria, and they crowd out the secondary bacteria and don't allow the secondary bacteria to get the nutrients they need. So we get lower levels of these key bacteria that are in the mucosa, like Akkermansia. What happens when we're practicing intermittent fasting or fasting mimicking diets is we trim down the primary feeders, and now we get more nutrients into the secondary feeders like Akkermansia. The best analogy for this that I can think of is that in my front yard here, I'm really blessed to have an apple tree, which is super cool, and blueberry bush. And so the apple tree actually, it grows quickly and its branches kind of almost cover the blueberry bush. And what happens is every year we actually have to trim the hedges. We actually have to cut down and cause damage to the apple tree. Otherwise, the blueberry bush doesn't get the sun. They don't get the amount of sun that it needs in order to grow. We don't get blueberries. So we've had certain summers where we didn't do that, and we learned the hard way because we thought we were going to have blueberries and we didn't. And so we actually had to cause damage and limit the amount of apples we would get so that we could get blueberries. Well, it's kind of the same thing in the gut. We've got to actually go through periods of time where we're reducing the amount of food that we're consuming in order so that we get a more diverse and well-balanced microbiome and higher levels, optimal levels of Akkermansia. So really interesting how all of this works. But you guys can see on this list just benefits for muscle health, skin health. I mean, so much great benefits to fasting in general. Now, history of fasting, I always say fasting is the most ancient, inexpensive, and powerful healing strategy known to mankind because all of our ancestors did it. Now, they weren't thinking, I want to lose some weight, so I think I'm going to condense my eating window and only eat between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. They weren't thinking that. They just didn't have refrigerators or pantries. They had to hunt and gather in order to get food. And there were many times where they were not successful hunting, or there were times of famine where, the harvest wasn't good. And so they were either fasting or eating, in a sense, a calorie restricted diet for days, sometimes days at a time. And so our body had to adapt to that in order for our species to continue to survive. And our body's really good at handling times of famine for short periods of time. Now, I'm not talking about like long-term famine. You'll see pictures, not here, but I mean, just go online. You'll look at pictures of malnourished people in Africa. I mean, it's not a good condition to be malnourished for months at a time, but short periods of time, let's say 5 days at a time, where we go on a very lower calorie diet, or just even portions of the day where we're not eating or reducing the amount of calories we're consuming, can have an incredibly therapeutic effect on our overall health. Prolonged water fasting, right? This is something that, there's clinics out there that help people with prolonged water fasting, been associated with repair and rejuvenation. Of course, today, like if I were to just go in my pantry, I've got enough food to last me probably a month. Just sitting there in my pantry, I could eat all day if I don't have self-discipline, right? And health goals that I want to accomplish. In fact, my children, right? They don't have necessarily health goals. They want to raid our pantry every chance they can. We've got to actually tell them, no, 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 now it's not the time to eat. And so many individuals out there, we look to food as a crutch, right? An emotional crutch. We feel bad about something. We feel stressed out. We feel overwhelmed, maybe. What do? We want a dopamine hit. Dopamine is a feel-good neurotransmitter. So we go and we grab food, and typically it's highly processed, hyper palatable foods, because that gives us the largest dopamine hit. We get a huge increase in dopamine. We feel good for a short period of time, but it spikes our blood sugar, spikes our insulin levels, creates inflammation in our system, creates more cravings. And then what happens? 2 hours later, we're having the same mood issue, right? So now our mood, our brain got a whole big jolt of sugar, but now we're in a reactive hypoglycemic state, and we don't have enough glucose to support the brain. And now we want another dopamine hit. We want more sugar, right? And we kind of get into this perpetual vicious cycle that can take place. And so obviously that's extremely problematic, not what we want to accomplish. Now, when we're looking at fasting, and fasting is one of the best ways to kind of reset your dopamine levels. I mean, it really is. And I think all of us at some level need to be resetting our dopamine levels, because everything is so hyper palatable. Even if you're like living a healthy lifestyle and you're following, Dr. Jockers' advice, like, I like to use stevia. You're probably using stevia or all natural sweeteners, and those things are really sweet and they hit dopamine, right? And if you're using that all day long, even if you're eating great foods, you're just doing it constantly throughout the day. You're drinking stevia flavored beverages. You're continually increasing dopamine. You're going to create dopamine resistance in your brain, and you might have mood disorders and have more cravings and more addictive behaviors. And so fasting and just kind of withdrawing from that can help reset the dopamine pathways in your brain, on top of all the other phenomenal benefits we've already discussed. Now, let's talk about different styles of fasting. Intermittent fasting, this is something I'm a huge advocate of, talk about in my book, practice on a regular basis. It's different ways of doing this. The most common is time restricted eating, like you're eating in a 8-hour eating window and you're fasting for 16 hours overnight. So you might condense your eating window to where you're eating between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. or 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Right? The most popular way is this form of 8-hour eating window, 16 hours overnight, right? So you're sleeping during part of that, where you are fasting. And then there's circadian eating, which is like basically a 12-hour fast. And then you start eating, let's say between 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. During the day. So those are probably the two most popular ways. And there's all different types of strategies. Some people eat in a 6-hour eating window. Some people will do a 4-hour eating window. Some people do a 10-hour eating window. So a lot of variations of that. There's also the 5-2 fast, which is basically 2 days where you fast. The other 5 days, you eat 3 meals in roughly, a 10 to 12-hour eating window. And 2 days, you just don't eat at all, or you just eat one meal, like maybe dinner, for example. That's a common way of doing it, of intermittent fasting. And then there's alternate day fasting, where you're just eating every other day. So you have a normal day of eating, and then the next day you don't eat, or you just eat, there's a few different ways of doing it. You just eat one meal. For some people, they just do one meal, depending on how much weight they want to lose and the goals they have. For other people, they don't eat at all. So they eat 3 meals on Monday, don't eat on Tuesday, eat 3 meals on Wednesday, right? And just continue like that every other day, or maybe just 3 days a week. So they eat on the weekends, and let's say Tuesday, or let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday are their fasting days. A lot of different ways that people go about it. And all of these strategies, all of them across the board, the research is showing great benefits, right? And there's so many different testimonials of people who use these that have had their life transformed. So these are really great strategies. But then there's in a sense, there's another category of fasting, and that's your prolonged or periodic fasting, where you get higher levels of cell renewal and cell rejuvenation. And there's two ways of doing this: a water fast. Basically, you're fasting with water, maybe some salts like electrolytes, something along those lines. And then there is the fasting mimicking diet, which is kind of like a super hack. So water fasting is amazing, but there can be challenges with that, obviously, right? For many people, many of you guys listening to this, you're like, oh, water fast, 3-5 day water fast seems really intimidating. Feel like I'm probably going to feel awful doing that. Some people do great with it. Some people really struggle with it, and they don't feel good. Fasting mimicking diet is this program that's like a super hack where you can actually consume some food. You're not consuming, it's not like a normal way of eating, and it's certainly a lower calorie way of eating. And it utilizes ways of kind of bypassing or not hitting the threshold on certain nutrient sensors to where you get basically these similar benefits as a water fast, but it's more comfortable experience for you. And there's a lot of great research on that I'm going to go through. Now, the effect of prolonged fasting on the cellular level, one of the great benefits is this process of autophagy, which means self-eating. And actually research done on autophagy by Dr. Osumi over in Japan. He won the Nobel Prize. But basically, this is a way that the body actually recycles old, damaged cellular proteins that are in our system. So the mitochondria I mentioned earlier, mitochondria are constantly under stress. So they're constantly rusting. There's a term called oxidative stress. As mitochondria produce energy, there are free radicals that are formed. Those free radicals damage components of the mitochondria. Now, if the mitochondria is really stress resilient, it's going to produce a lot of antioxidants, right? Superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, catalase, and it's going to defend itself. However, when we have poor blood sugar balance, when we have a high amount of toxins that we're exposed to, infections, a whole variety of things, it causes an excess amount of oxidative stress that damages and rusts the mitochondria. Over time, the mitochondria become dysfunctional and what we call senescent. And our body really needs to get rid of those because they take up space in the cell, but they're not actually doing what they need to do, what the cell needs them to do to be able to be optimal and to thrive. And there's also a whole bunch of misfolded proteins inside the cellular structures. These misfolded proteins cause abnormal function. And the longer the cell is functioning abnormally, it's going to then replicate, and it's going to replicate into another cell that also has misfolded proteins and dysfunctional mitochondria. So we want to get rid of the senescent or aged cells, the aged organelles, the mitochondria, the misfolded proteins, and autophagy is really the way to do that. And the number one way to stimulate autophagy, there's many things. Exercise stimulates autophagy. There's certain herbs that can help stimulate autophagy. Even coffee, actually, for people that respond well to it, can have some level of benefit for autophagy. But by far, the number one way to support autophagy is through some level of prolonged fasting. Intermittent fasting will stimulate a little bit, but prolonged fasting is really the most powerful way to get these kind of benefits. Now, as I mentioned earlier, prolonged water fast, incredible health benefits, but there can also be associated with a number of different health challenges, right? Number one is adherence. For a lot of people, they just can't be compliant, right? They feel awful day one, day two, they end up breaking it, right? And they're like, oh, I wanted to do it, but I struggled with it. And then the number two is safety. For some individuals, especially if you already have chronic health conditions, there can be some safety issues with it. And this is why, there are centers where you can actually go and they medically manage you while you're doing the water fast, because they want to make sure your blood pressure doesn't drop too low, blood sugar doesn't drop too low, right? That you don't develop gallstones. There's a whole bunch of different issues that are associated with this. And, for older individuals, a big issue is sarcopenia or loss of muscle mass. And if you're doing a prolonged water fast, that can be a challenge where you're actually losing muscle mass as well. And if you're already low in muscle mass, that can be really challenging because it's hard to build muscle mass. You got to do work for that. And you got to really follow good protocols. And so water fasting is great, but again, there are challenges with that. And that's why I love Prolon. Prolon, this is the fasting mimicking diet. It is a 5-day program that essentially tricks your body into thinking you're fasting. And that gives you the benefits of a 5-day water fast, but still lets you eat food and provide your body with nutrients. And compared to water fasting, fasting mimicking diet is safer, right? In fact, a lot of people, they are on medications. They need to take medications while they're fasting. And a lot of their medications they need to take with food. And so this way you're able to take medications, for example, and not have bad side effects because you took them with food, right? It's easier because you're eating and it provides more overall nourishment, provides key nourishing compounds for your system. Now, let's talk about the history of Prolon. It's designed by one of the most well-known nutritional researchers, Dr. Walter Longo. This guy is really a brilliant researcher. He's very well published. And, he found that he was one of the first researchers to really look at some of the benefits of fasting, intermittent fasting, different things like that. And he wanted to create something that people could be more compliant in. And he started doing research on this idea of fasting mimicking diet. And there's been over 20 years of research and development on it, over $48 million in research grants, 36 million from the NIH and the EU government funding, that's really important because there's not profit to be made. Unfortunately, with research, many of you guys know, if there's not a profit incentive, a lot of times these governmental agencies are not putting a whole lot of money into it. And ultimately fasting, nobody's really profiting off of fasting. There's no drugs that are being, trademarked and sold. Like there's no payoff on the back end if you're doing studying on fasting. And so it's really powerful that they've been able to kind of find a protocol and actually get this funding. They have over 100 international patents demonstrated to be safe with over 800,000. So over 800,000 people have gone through it. Great safety profile. Over 15,000 of those people were, or over 15,000 prescribing medical professionals with safety profile carefully tracked. So a lot of medical professionals are using this in their clinics and being really focused on tracking safety for their patients and also tracking results. And there's a lot of great research on this. So let's talk about how it works. See, Prolon, you're actually eating. This is why I talk about it's like a super hack. So you're fasting, but you're eating, which, it's like, that doesn't really make sense. But the thing about it is in our body, there's thresholds. We talk about insulin, right? And getting, I think I said this earlier. And if you follow me, I talk about if you want to burn fat for fuel, you want to reduce inflammation, you got to get insulin down. But that doesn't mean no insulin. You always have some level of insulin in your blood. You just need to get it below a critical threshold. Well, it's kind of the same way here. You can get tremendous benefits from fasting and actually eat food as long as you don't go above certain critical thresholds in what we call nutrient sensing pathways. And that is the science and design of Prolon, the fasting mimicking diet. It gets you nutrients, but it doesn't trigger the nutrient sensing pathways. So you're able to still get autophagy, mitophagy, where your body breaks down the old damaged mitochondria. You're able to get stem cell development, where your body actually gets rid of these beyond repair cells, these senescent old damaged cells. You get rid of them, and then you stimulate stem cell production. So new, young cells that are incredibly stress resilient. You're able to get these tremendous benefits. Human growth hormone release, which helps preserve lean body mass. And I'm going to go through all these great benefits. And that's because you're going up to, but not exceeding the nutrient sensing pathway threshold. So what are the benefits of Prolon? Let's talk about that from a research perspective. Well, it's been shown to reverse your biological age, 2.5 years biological age reversal with 3 consecutive cycles. That meant 5 days a month, right? So you do the 5-day Prolon program once a month, 25 days where you're eating ideally like a healthy diet, right? Which is what Prolon teaches, healthy nutrient dense diet, which we'll talk about as we go on. And you're just doing it once a month and doing 3 cycles. So 3 months, been shown 2.5-year biological age as measured via Yale's biological age formula developed by Dr. Morgan Levine. So you can look that up if you want to know more about that. 11 years of biological age reversal with 3 cycles a year for 20 years. So doing it once every 4 months, right? And we'll talk about protocols as we go on, or the, kind of the most commonly followed protocols for the fasting mimicking diet. But this is, that's pretty incredible. 11 years of biological age reversal. So we can't stop your chronological age, right? You're just going to continue to age, but we can slow down your biological age and in many cases reverse it, like what we're seeing here. So if somebody's 60 and their biological age, most 60-year-olds, their biological age in our society is like 75. They're like 15 years biologically older than they are. We can start to reverse that with 3 cycles a year, right? And so pretty significant information right there, pretty significant findings. Now, this right here is 3 monthly cycles of Prolon support weight loss with muscle maintenance. So one of the big issues I talked about with water fasting is muscle loss, okay? And so this was a 2019 study that was in the Science of Translational Medicine. They took healthy individuals. So these were individuals that didn't have any chronic diseases. And what they found was that 3 monthly cycles, like I talked about, doing it 5 days a month for 3 months, average individual lost 5.73 pounds, about 1 point on body mass index, 0.9. And they had visceral fat, pretty significant visceral fat loss, which is that inflammatory, damaging fat. That's what we want to lose. But they did not lose lean body mass. In fact, they actually gained 0.8 pounds of lean body mass, right? And so that's great. That's what we want. Okay. So it preserved the lean body mass, even though the individual was losing weight. And they're doing this without doing, strength training or anything like that, just really following the protocol for the fasting mimicking diet. They also showed, and actually the title of the study is Fasting Mimicking Diet and Markers and Risk Factors for Aging, Diabetes, Cancer, and Cardiovascular Disease. They also showed improvements in cardiovascular risk factors in this study. A lot of really good stuff. Now, this one is a very recent study. This actually just came out. And it was a randomized control study on obese and hypertensive individuals. And they compared doing the fasting mimicking diet 5-day program for 4 consecutive months. So that basically equaled out to 20 days of Prolon. And then that was one group. So they ate a normal diet, 25 days out of the month. 5 days they did Prolon each month for 4 months. And then they had a group do Mediterranean diet for that 4-month period of time, 120 days. Mediterranean diet's well known for being, it's considered the gold standard for healthy diets in the medical journals, right? And so a lot of good benefits: extra virgin olive oil, olives, lamb. It's low in processed foods, high in nutrient dense foods that people are consuming. And so what they did here was that they looked at cardiometabolic scores, and they found that there was significant improvement in the Prolon group in the functional integrity of the vascular endothelial cells. This is really key when we're looking at cardiovascular health. We look at the internal lining of the blood vessels called the endothelial lining. When that endothelial lining becomes damaged, it loses its elasticity. And so it doesn't bend and flex well, which causes blood pressure to go up and also restricts the amount of blood that can flow into major areas of the body, which reduces oxygen levels going into those areas of the body, reduces glucose levels, right? And so for overall cardiovascular health, the goal of your cardiovascular system is to get oxygen and nutrients to all the cells of your body. You need to have, really good vascular tone in order to do that. And so this study showed that Prolon had a significant impact on what was called the reactive hyperemia index, which there's been studies that have looked at basically having a high reactive hyperemia index, and that being associated with higher rates of mortality and chronic disease. And so really powerful study. The other thing about this was that the people on the Mediterranean diet, they actually lost 1.9 pounds of lean body mass, whereas the people doing Prolon had 0 loss in lean body mass. So, both groups had some weight loss, but the Mediterranean group, I don't know exactly why, they actually lost some of the lean body mass, probably because they weren't getting the same human growth hormone elevation that you get when you're undergoing a fasting mimicking diet or doing fasting, which helps preserve your lean body mass. So that's really interesting. Now, if you're interested in improving your skin, you're going to really like this one right here. They looked at 45 women that were between 35 and 60 years. This is out of the Journal of Clinical Medicine, January 2023. They did 3 monthly cycles of the fasting mimicking diet. Okay. And they showed less fine lines and wrinkles, significant improvement in mental states as well. These women noticed that they were significantly more happy and more confident. They measured their skin hydration, and they showed after one cycle, there was a 25% increase in skin hydration. And they did 3D, this Antera 3D imaging, which looks at color, texture, melanin, right? It really analyzes the skin. And they showed that, the skin was significantly better, more elastic tissue, better collagen structures. One of the reasons why is that I was talking about autophagy. One of the ways that our skin, what happens to our skin when we get age spots, fine lines, and wrinkles is it's all these misfolded proteins. And if we're not getting rid of these misfolded proteins, they end up building up. And those misfolded proteins cause poor elasticity, poor skin moisturization, and they can lead to fine lines and wrinkles and things like that. And so the autophagy impact of the fasting mimicking diet ended up causing less of these misfolded proteins in the skin, and better, healthier collagen, better, healthier elastin tissue, and better overall skin function. So these individuals looked younger and felt better. And of course, that for most women, I know for my wife, the better her skin looks, the more happy she is, right? I mean, I think that's pretty normal. I mean, really for men as well, right? The more confident we are, we feel like we're younger. So a lot of great benefits there. Now, this is also really good. The Prolon impacts behavioral and emotional well-being, because really ultimately our quality of life, not only is our physical health really important, but we want to be really healthy mentally and emotionally, and also have, control over our behavior. So many people in our society are so impulsive. They get mad, they see some sort of clickbait online. They get mad. Somebody, isn't driving great on the road and they're losing their temper. Their child does something, they're losing their temper. So many people are impulsive. They can't control their behaviors, and it ends up leading to them making a lot of bad decisions, increasing the amount of stress that they have in their life, and also hurting the people around them. And so this is a survey done by over 2,000 patients after one 5-day fasting mimicking cycle. This is in 2019. And what was interesting, just to start, was that 96.3% completed their fasting mimicking cycle. To me, working with people on fasting, one of the big issues is compliance. If you can get 96.3% of of individuals who sign up to do some sort of a healthy lifestyle approach to actually be compliant, like that's incredible. I mean, how many people just signed up in January to work out, right? To go to the gym. And how many of them are actually being compliant with whatever their goal was there? Maybe 30%, right? So just that alone is pretty amazing. And if you try to get somebody to do a 5-day water fast, if you get 2,000 people and say, okay, you guys are all going to do a 5-day water fast, if you get 30% compliance, that's pretty amazing. So what's awesome is 96.3% compliance tells me this is something that people can be successful at. And when it comes to a healthy lifestyle, that's the number one thing. You want something that isn't going to be overly intimidating. It's something that you can be successful at. And so that's the proof in the pudding there. And then what they did was they looked at these individuals after, they followed through with the cycle. 89% were motivated to adopt a healthier lifestyle, more mindful of what they're eating, 80%, more control over their health, 77%. Healthier eating habits, 70%, less food cravings, 67%, increased mental clarity and focus, right? That's why I talk about why I practice these things. 62%, greater energy, 61%, better portion control, 69%, less sugar craving, 65%. So, really powerful stuff right there. And, this is why fasting mimicking diet can be really, really powerful. Now, I'm going to take questions at the end, but let's talk about some of the most common questions, get those out of the way first. So here are some tips. Drink water, right? You got to hydrate, minimum 32 ounces of water. In addition to when you buy the Prolon pack, it comes with this drink, the L drink, which is a hydrating drink, helps drive fluid into the cells, provide some electrolytes in there. And you want to personalize your goal. You should be drinking at least half your body weight in ounces a day. I always tell people you got to pee and poop your way to good health. And so hydration helps keep things moving through your system like a river. You don't want your body to be like a stagnant pond. What happens in a pond? There's over fermentation, there's putrefaction, it starts to smell, you get algae buildup everywhere. Water hydration helps move things through your system, move toxins out. And so you should be peeing, you should be pooping, right? And that's going to really help keep you regular there. Hydrating. Also, hydrating helps with satiety. When you drink water, fills your stomach, reduces hunger hormone ghrelin, makes you feel satiated. Light exercise. So while you're doing these 5 days, like the 25 days out of the month, I'm a huge advocate of getting exercise, resistance training, trying to build muscle. But during these 5 days, you're on a calorie restricted diet. You're not trying, you want to be careful not to stimulate these nutrient sensing pathways. So we don't want intense exercise. Light exercise, going for walks is probably the best thing you can do. Go out for walks, or if it's bad weather, if you have like a stationary bike or elliptical in your house, just some light pedaling on that, not trying to get your heart rate up really high, just trying to get movement in. Movement helps keep things moving in your body. And it's also helps bring oxygen into all the cells of your body, helps your lymphatic system flow better, helps stimulate healthy mood benefiting neurotransmitters in your brain. A lot of great benefits to that. So we definitely recommend light exercise, but nothing where you're trying to get your heart rate up, or nothing where you're trying to really build muscle doing intense resistance training during that period of time. Stay busy. When we're just kind of like sitting around all day, oftentimes we're bored, and many people, when they're bored, their favorite go-to is eating food. And so just staying busy and productive, one of the best ways to keep your mind off of food and off of things that, perhaps coming into this program, you were craving. So stay busy. Obviously, you don't want to be overwhelmed with stress, but stay busy. Have some projects you're working on. That's key. Really prioritize sleep and rest. And that's just a great recommendation across the board. We don't do that enough, right? I heard one researcher say we have a darkness deficiency in our society because, it's nighttime and we're on electronics, oftentimes late. Okay. We're not exposed to darkness enough. And obviously most people are not sleeping enough. So really try to prioritize good sleep and rest. Over the counter medications like Advil, Tylenol, I know many of you guys are taking those. You want to use as a last resort. The good thing is, you follow this program, oftentimes you'll notice that a lot of the symptoms of pain, things like that, can improve. And if you're able to go without taking any sort of over-the-counter medications like that, it's better. But, if you really need them, you can also take those as well. Now, medications and supplements, pause non-prescription supplements. This is the most common question to get, is when I'm following a fasting mimicking diet, can I continue to take my magnesium, my probiotics, my omega-3s, my vitamin D? Can I continue to do that? And because this program has been so well researched, they find the results without utilizing those. And what I'll tell people is that taking a supplement vacation from time to time is actually really beneficial, meaning that, if you're taking the same supplements every single day, your body might habituate to it and it may not be as effective anyways. So actually taking like 5 days a month and coming off a lot of these supplements, for a lot of people, they notice that their body responds better when they actually get back on these supplements. So nothing wrong at all with coming off supplements. Supplements are different than like hardcore prescription medications. Like there are some people that are on certain medications, like a type 1 diabetic, perhaps using insulin, where it's like, it could be life-threatening if they come off that medication cold turkey. Supplements are not like that. Supplements are designed to supplement a healthy lifestyle. You can come off a supplement for a week or two and, you're not going to have negative side effects. You're not going to die. You're not going to end up in the hospital by coming off of that. So totally fine. Come off of it for 5 days. If you feel like the supplement, you respond well to it, take it for the other 25 days, but come off of it for those 5 days. So that's the key. Continue with prescription medications. Of course, consult with your physician. If you have a natural-minded physician that's also prescribing the medications, they may have some advice for you, maybe perhaps lowering certain dosages, perhaps coming off of some of them. Whatever it is, it's always good to consult with your physician. And ideally, they're an open-minded physician that's open-minded to a lot of these strategies. General recommendations: consume everything in the box. So you get basically, the way the fasting mimicking diet works is you order it, you get a box of food. Okay. There's soups, there's even herbal teas, different things like that. you just consume everything in the box each day. So you do that. Don't switch items between days. Each day is specifically mapped out. So there's a specific formula here. So don't consume day 3 on day 1. That's, you wouldn't want to do that. Day 1, you consume day 1. Day 2, right? That's kind of how it works. Eat any time of day. So there's no specific eating window. Eat when you're hungry. Eat when it's most convenient for you. Eat in any order. So once you open the box, like there's a blend of different types of foods and things like that. Eat them in any order that you like. You can use a blender bottle or immersion blender for soups that they have with that you basically just add water to. And don't add anything except for water. That includes, Prolon has a number of different products. They have a fast bar, fast shake. They have an L spread. A lot of people will ask me, well, when I'm doing the fasting mimicking diet, can I also drink bone broth? Or can I drink lemon water, apple cider vinegar water? And we just say for those 5 days, just keep it to water and the box. I mean, it's really that simple. Like there's no other special cocktail that you need to add in for extra benefits. The research has been done, is continuing to be done, that you just follow the protocol, right? You don't have to kind of add in anything. So there's less thinking that goes into it. And, it's been proven to get amazing results. So who is Prolon for? It's for those who are looking to lose weight, healthy aging support, metabolic balance support, right? So better blood sugar, lower insulin levels, so better insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, right? A number of different things like that. Now, who should not do this? Now, this is important, just as important as who it's for. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding, we don't recommend that. You need to be consuming more calories during that period of time. You've got a growing baby inside of you or a growing baby that's drinking off you, right? You need a lot more calories, a lot more nutrients. Don't do this if that's you. Children, right, under 17 years of age, we don't have research for that. And they're in a fast growing stage. So we don't recommend it for kids. There are certain things in the Prolon packs like nuts, oats, sesame. I know there's olives in there. So if you have certain dietary restrictions, the most common ones are nuts, oats, and sesame. Now, I know there's oats in there, and a lot of people think, well, oats are gluten. This is gluten-free, right? So it's 100% gluten-free and non-GMO. Okay. So if you're concerned about pesticides, herbicides, things like that, this is really clean. No gluten in it. So, if you have a gluten sensitivity or allergy, do fine with this. But if you do have a sensitivity to different tree nuts, oats, sesame, those are the most common ones that are the ingredients in there that people may have a sensitivity to, then you would want to avoid it. Maybe down the road, they'll come up some other formulas, which would be great for people that are dealing with that. But right now they're so focused on getting the research done on this particular protocol that, that's where we're at right now. Let's see, malnourished, underweight. So if you're like very, very thin, underweight, BMI less than 18.5, probably not a good idea. Or if you've had an eating disorder, I always say, if you've had bulimia, anorexia, you should not be making the decision to fast. That should be a decision that your family members and your psychologist or counselor, you need to be consulting them, and they need to give you the approval if this is something you want to do for, healthy aging support, things like that, because they're going to know, are you healthy mentally and psychologically? Or will this help revert you back into an eating disorder? Certainly we don't want that. And so obviously consult with them. Symptoms or treatment of an active infection, not something you want to do. If you're dealing with the flu, don't do this, right? Or risk of recurrent infection. So, and of course, always advisable to talk to your doctor about it. So those are things that we definitely want to look at. Obviously, there's some great benefits to doing it. So if you're really looking to improve your overall health, if you're not in that category of people who should not fast, then I want to introduce you to the Prolon program. And we have a special offer for you guys. You can get 15% off of your box, your monthly cycle, for a limited time when you use the code Dr. Talks, DRTALKS. You'll also get a free subscription to the Fasting and Longevity Summit when you do that as well. So you can listen to all the great research and talks, many of them specifically on the fasting mimicking diet. So you can check that out. And Prolon also has a lot of support. They have health coaches that really help support people as they're going through this. They help, there's ways that you can do it with communities. And so they can help support you with that. You just go to their site, prolonlife.com. And again, use that coupon code and you can kind of find out, obviously, all the details of what that looks like with it. But I'm telling you, this is an amazing program. And this is the best offer I've seen Prolon actually give, right? And the cool thing is, Prolon, they put all the proceeds, so they put a high percentage of their profits back into research. They're constantly doing research. They are a research focused company. And really, from a nutrition perspective, they're leading the way. Like, their nutrition companies don't do research. You guys got to realize that. Um, you know, Local farmers aren't doing research on their grass-fed beef, for example, right? I mean, it's like it costs so much to do any sort of randomized control trial, but Prolon, their research team, is so focused on grading great research, and really testing the limits of what the fasting mimicking diet can do. And so it's pretty amazing the amount of research that they put together, and they have continual. I mean, they've got a number of different trials going on right now, looking at a wide range of different health conditions and health markers. So really cool stuff. Now let's talk about what happens as we're going through this fast. Day one, you enjoy the most calories. So average individual, they say, needs about 2,000 calories a day. The more active you are, the more muscle mass you have, you might need more. I eat more than 2,000 calories typically in a normal day because I'm very metabolically active, high amount of muscle mass. But the average individual is about 2,000. So this drops you down to 1,100 calories. Okay. Now that alone is not enough to really go under the nutrient sensor triggers, but it starts to transition us into that, and that lower calorie format starts getting our body into a state where we start burning up excess glycogen which is basically stored sugar in our muscle, liver. And that's key. We got to burn through that before we start really getting into fat burning and ketosis. Now, on day one, you want to live in the box, right? Just like what I've been talking about. So you don't need to think about anything else. Just focus on eating what's in the box and also hydrating your body. Enjoy the contents any time of the day, like I already talked about. They also have nutritional supplements in the Prolon. I forgot to mention that earlier. They actually provide you with multivitamin. They provide you with some supplements that they found to be the most important supplements during this plan, and they give you recommendations for how to utilize those. So basically, day one, you're starting to break down the glucose stores, which are in your muscle and in your liver. You start utilizing that. And everyone's unique, so for some individuals are more metabolically flexible than others. The more insulin resistant you are coming in, the longer it takes to get into burning fat for fuel. The more metabolically flexible and the better your body is at burning fat for fuel, the faster you get into fat burning. And so everyone's experience is going to be unique depending on your baseline level of metabolic flexibility. Obviously, really key to stay hydrated. If absolutely necessary, you can do seltzers with natural flavorings only. So no sweeteners, no stevia. Okay. So don't just, put a bunch of stevia or monk fruit just because they're natural sweeteners and they're healthier, don't impact blood sugar. Don't put that in there because we really don't want anything to alter it. And I have found that some individuals, they get an insulin impact when they are taking a lot of stevia, and that triggers those nutrient sensor pathways and you don't get the benefits. So that's why you want to avoid the sweeteners. Decaffeinated herbal teas, particularly the ones that they have looked at, that Prolon has looked at, spearmint, lemon, and hibiscus. They found, decaf versions of these that to be totally fine. You can do those, but try to avoid two ingredients. Like you'll find there's a lot of different blends that have hibiscus in it, but then they have other ingredients in there as well. So try to stick with just single ingredient only herbal teas, no sweeteners, no milk. Okay. Optional additions in cases where you simply can't continue with your Prolon. You can also try 1 teaspoon of dried herbs or spices. Again, single ingredient only, maybe pepper, cayenne pepper, cumin, red pepper flakes, chili powder, oregano, basil, thyme, rosemary, cinnamon, and 1 teaspoon of sea salt per day. So you can try that as well. Excessive hunger. I find that most people don't deal with this, but there are certain small subset that may deal with a lot of hunger. And as a last resort, if you feel that you're not able to complete the fast due to hunger, you can have one of the following: 1 to 2 thin slices of small apple. The slices should be no more than 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick. This is key. This is how detailed this program is and how well studied, because if you're consuming more than that, you're going to trigger these nutrient sensor pathways. You're not going to get the autophagy. You're not going to get the growth hormone release and the, the stem cell production in the way that Prolon has been designed. So one single stalk of celery, one small Persian or baby cucumber, 5 to 6 inches in length. So that's key that, if you're going to add anything, just a little bit of that. That's about it. Okay. Fasting day 2. Now day 2, so we did 1,100 calories day 1. Day 2 is dropping it down, 750. So it's under 40% of the normal caloric load. Remember, normal caloric load is 2,000 calories. 800 would be 40%. We're under that now, 750. Now we start shifting more into ketosis. What are ketones? Basically, our body burns fat, and most of the cells in our body can use fatty acids as an energy source, but we can't get fatty acids across the blood-brain barrier to be used by the brain cells. And our brain cells, our neurons, are extremely metabolically active. And so we need some sort of energy source as we're lowering calories and as we're burning through the glycogen. So the liver actually will take fatty acids, convert them into small water-soluble molecules. We call those ketones. They cross the blood-brain barrier. They're a fuel source for the brain cells, but they're also a messenger molecule and what we call an epigenetic influencer. So one of the things when we get ketones elevated in the brain is they shut down the inflammatory amplifying pathways. We call that the inflammasome. So in our brain, or really throughout our body, we have just, we can have localized inflammation where it's just kind of impacting one specific area. But most people are dealing with systemic inflammation, where it's just kind of this widespread inflammatory spiral, right? And it's just more and more inflammation because of leaky gut, toxins, all these different things. Ketones elevate in the brain, it shuts down that inflammatory spiral, okay? And it turns on cell regeneration and renewal, right? And that's really key. And also it helps balance what we call the glutamate to GABA ratio in the brain. When we have brain inflammation, we have high glutamate. Glutamate's like the gas pedal in the brain. So it's helping us think sharply and quickly, but it needs to be balanced by GABA, which is the brakes in the brain. If you're driving your car and your brakes go out, that's scary. Not you're likely to get injured, possibly even killed. Well, in the brain, when we have a poor glutamate to GABA ratio, we're not able to hit the brakes. We get hyper-excitability in the brain cells, and we get something called neuroexcitotoxicity, where the brain cells become so hyperactive, they actually die, and then they spill out their contents and kill neurons around them. And this can result in anxiety, depression, impulsive behavior, like I was talking about, cravings, a wide range, anger, irritability, wide range of things. Ketones help balance the glutamate to GABA pathway, which helps us think sharply and quickly, but also be calm and relaxed. And this is one of the reasons why many people will do fasting and they just notice, wow, I just feel great, right? And they have more creativity oftentimes. They're able to have better breakthroughs in, they're in a wide range of things and different struggles they're dealing with in life, or in their career choice, or whatever it is. They're able to have, better cognition and feel more calm and at peace because of the ketones. Now, we need to get the ketones elevated, and we also have to get our body used to utilizing them. And there can be an adaptation period. For some individuals, especially if you're very insulin resistant, metabolically inflexible, never really elevated ketones in your body, there are times where people can have unwanted effects. We call that the keto flu. It's short term, but it can be uncomfortable. It's not necessarily dangerous if you handle it right, but it can be uncomfortable. And so one of the things, there's the L drink that's part of this that's added in on day 2, which helps with cellular hydration. And that's a really key component here. And it provides an alternative energy source as well. And ultimately, the science of ketosis, the body's goal is homeostasis, right? The body loves glucose. When glucose is limited, it switches to burning fat for fuel and transforms the fat into ketones. Ketosis is not a complete indication of fasting. Fluctuations in ketones are expected. So a lot of people want to test their ketones while they're doing this, and you really don't need to do that. If you just follow the program, you're going to elevate ketones. You're going to reduce your blood sugar and your insulin levels. If you're testing, right? I mean, you can, but it's certainly not necessary. It's not something you need to be doing to make sure you're getting results on this. And the ketones are going to range for each individual based on, how their body produces ketones, how they utilize, how well they are at burning ketones for energy. That's really key because sometimes ketones can be elevated, but your body's not actually using them for energy because it hasn't adapted to them yet. So this is why testing ketones here, not necessary. You'll notice the difference. As your body starts using ketones, you actually feel significantly better. In the in-between stage, when your blood sugar's low and you haven't gotten your ketones elevated, that's no man's land, right? You really don't have the amount of metabolic fuel that you need, and that's where you can oftentimes feel uncomfortable. But I will say, again, going back to that study, over 2,000 patients, 96.3% completed this. So they didn't feel so uncomfortable that they couldn't complete this program, which is key. I want you guys to remember that. So for some of you guys, as you do this, you may feel a little uncomfortable, particularly on day one, day two, as you're transitioning here. But high rate of compliance tells me that it's not that significant. Okay. Continuous glucose meters. I think these are really great. It's a great way to kind of test where your blood sugar is, throughout the day, but you don't need to wear one of these. Okay. Like you're going to get results whether you wear one of these or not. Sometimes people wear these and then they get really worried. They're like, oh, I ate this meal and my glucose went up. Okay. Am I doing this right? A lot of times there's unnecessary stress that people put on themselves when they're trying to test and measure as they're going through this. So I would just say it's not something you necessarily need to do. This has been well researched. So it's not something that you have to test and measure every component of your physiology as you're going through this. And that, again, simplifies it. That's why the compliance is good. If you got to test and measure everything, compliance is going to go down. It's going to get stressful. Okay, body. So the keto flu, your most common symptoms are headache, nausea, muscle aches, and lightheadedness. So on day two, if you start noticing that, make sure you're hydrating. That's key. They have the L-Nutra drink, the L drink. That's key. Movement, getting some movement, resting, getting some sleep. Warm Epsom salt bath can be really helpful. Epsom salts have magnesium and sulfates that will diffuse in your system. A lot of people feel really good. And even if you can't do like a whole bath, you can actually just do Epsom salts and like a foot bath, and that will get into your body as well. So like at night, you can just, get some Epsom salts from the grocery store, ideally without the fragrances, just pure Epsom salts. I don't trust the fragrances, bunch of chemicals. So just get pure Epsom salts. If you want fragrance, you can use like essential oils or something. Put a little bit of that in, obviously you can put it in a bath, right? Or just again in like a little pot that you have and stick your feet in there, and that will get the magnesium, the sulfates in there, which can be helpful. Again, over-the-counter medications for some of you guys, it's like your first go-to when you have a headache. Typically, you don't need that here, okay? But if you do that, that's not the end of the day, right? You can still get results using this. Okay, let's look at day three. So now day three, now we're getting into autophagy, right? So we've gone through this transition stage of, burning through sugar, starting to get into ketosis and burning fat. And now we've got insulin down low enough to where we get the cellular cleanup. So fat burning continues, ketone production continues, and we get better at using the ketones. So a lot of times people feel a lot better come day three as they're doing this, and particularly as they get into day four as well. So autophagy, we talked about this. It means self-eating. It's the body's way of cleaning house, right? Recycling old damaged cellular components and taking the raw materials and creating new healthy cellular structures. And that's going to help reduce inflammation. It's going to help improve overall immune function and cellular rejuvenation. So let's watch this quick video.
Your body's natural way of cleaning house. Prolonged fasting is a hot topic these days because of its amazing benefits. It's a fast way to start weight loss. You can reduce belly fat, reset your metabolic health, and enhance your mental clarity and energy. But cell rejuvenation is the most profound benefit. In fact, the 2016 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded for discoveries about that process called autophagy. The process starts when you do a prolonged fast or a fasting mimicking diet. As your cells stop sensing food, your body literally turns to itself for nourishment. But that's a good thing. As your cells are in fasting mode, they gather their old, worn out parts like organelles and misfolded proteins and digest them. Then amino acids and other molecules are released, which help your cells recycle, reuse, and clean the old, worn out parts and rejuvenate themselves. It's your body's natural way of cleaning house and rejuvenating, which supports healthy aging and wellness. Think of it as a pit stop for your body. Just as a pit stop optimizes a race car's performance, prolonged fasting and autophagy can do the same for you.
So you can see exciting what autophagy does for your body. And if you really want to renew your cells, you've got to get your body in a state of autophagy, and in particular, deep autophagy. So as we go into day 4, now we're in a deep state of autophagy. So autophagy really picks up in day 3, and day 4 is deep state of autophagy. So deep cellular cleaning, cell rejuvenation, fat burning, and ketosis. And then day 5, we get into cell renewal. So the body wants to either repair an old damaged cell, right, and cellular components, or if it can't, if it's beyond repair, it just eliminates those cells, something called apoptosis, where it's programmed cell death, or the immune system will actually activate and break down that cell. And then we need to replace that cell. So what do we replace it with? Something called stem cells. And that's where we start to get, as we move into day 5, is an increase in stem cells, which are these young, incredibly stress resilient cells. So super powerful. Now, here's a study: results sustained after 3 cycles, regardless of diet between rounds. So these individuals did 5 days of the fasting mimicking diet, and then they just followed a normal diet. So obviously, I'm a huge guy. Those who know me, I'm a huge advocate of a healthy diet and lifestyle, and so is Prolon. They're huge advocates of a healthy diet and lifestyle. But what's cool about this study is they didn't give people dietary restrictions or dietary advice outside of, following the fasting mimicking diet, because they just wanted to see, would people lose all the results? And what they found was that after 3 months of doing 3 cycles, so they did 3 cycles and then they waited 3 months, they found that the waist circumference, right, that 60% had continued with improvement in their waist circumference, 55% with their blood pressure, body weight 64%, and BMI 71%. So it shows us that most individuals are continuing with the improvement, even if they aren't following a healthy lifestyle after doing the fasting mimicking diet. Now, the transition diet, as we get into day 5, as we get into basically coming off of this, what you want to add, you want to listen to your body, add small amounts of fruits and vegetables, low sugar fruit in particular, berries, apples, grapefruits, Granny Smith apples, like green apples tend to be lower in sugar than red apples. Light proteins, right? You want to kind of reawake your digestive juices. So you could do plant-based proteins, baked fish, or skinless chicken. You don't have to produce as much stomach acid as you would for like red meat or something like that. And then adding half liquids while reintroducing solids, like doing a protein shake or something along those lines. Easy on the digestive system because the blender has already done the work. So you kind of want to gently wake up your digestive system. And then the Prolon protocol is basically 1 time a month. You do it. So 25 days in between. You don't want to do it more than 1 time per month. So just once a month. And typically you do 3 to 4 cycles in a row for weight loss and longevity, 3 times for deeper metabolic health, right? Really trying to dramatically improve insulin sensitivity and overall longevity. You can do 4 cycles. Okay. So basically, you do it 5 days, 3 months in a row, or 4 months in a row, kind of like what they did with that Mediterranean diet study where they did it 4 months in a row. Once you've done that, most people go on maintenance where they're doing it 3 to 4 times a year. So you might do it quarterly, once every 3 months, let's say, a quarterly protocol to continue to replace these bad damaged cells and to get the cellular renewal and rejuvenation. And that's a phenomenal program that you can follow. And it's a lifestyle. It's really just a lifestyle that you follow to keep your body healing and repairing at the cellular level. So if that's you, if you really want to take advantage of this and heal at the deep cellular level, stimulate that autophagy, stimulate that cell renewal and rejuvenation, then I want to tell you to take advantage of this offer. and you can get the 15% off Prolon with the code Doctor Talks at checkout. There's a QR code there that you can, just put your phone up, your camera up, and that will take you right there. Or you can go to prolonlife.com as well. And we also have the special bonus, a free subscription to my fasting and longevity summit. There's many great interviews, like with Dr. Walter Longo, who developed this, where he goes deeper into the research. A lot of really cool things, a lot of research, and a lot of presentations that can really help support you as you're going through this fasting journey. So again, I want to, just recommend that you take advantage of this if you're looking for these benefits. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. And I do want to take a moment and answer just a few of the questions. I know probably there's a lot of questions that people have. And so I wanted to take a moment and answer a few of these. Let's see. What do we have? So I've got the chat box open. People from all over the place: Alabama, Australia, Toronto, kind of
And
just,
and thanks, Dr. Jockers. I'm just going to jump in while you're looking through that, because I want to
yeah.
make sure everybody knows that not only do you get the 15% off Prolon when you use the discount code Dr. Talks, but anybody who also purchases that gets access to the 2024 all brand new Fasting for Longevity Summit that was recorded by Dr. Jockers and Dr. Joseph Anton. So that's $197 value. That's only available for you if you purchase on this webinar. So please take advantage of it, because you'll get full access to that. Again, that's a $197 value. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. All right.
Yeah, that's great. All right. I'm trying to, a lot of great comments in here. A lot of people talking about different things. Let's see. I will tell you that probably the most common questions that I get, people will say, is there research on fasting mimicking diet with such and such particular condition? And like I mentioned earlier, Prolon is doing research on a wide range of conditions. Many of those clinical trials are still early. They haven't been published yet, but they do have a section on their website where it says science, and you can actually go in there and you can find a number of different studies, and their customer service can also help with, locating specific studies. And that's what they really want to do, is study every, major health condition that's out there and see what kind of results take place. And so that's really good right now. Certainly diabetes, high blood pressure. They've got some good research on that. Cardiometabolic risk factors, got some really good research on that. And so longevity, we talked about biological age. So really good research on that. So again, check out the science area if you're looking for specific studies. Another one that I get is, again, going back to supplements. People will say, well, can I take prebiotics, probiotics, omega-3s while I'm doing this? The goal is just stay in the box, because it's been well researched. Again, this is a simple program from the perspective that there's nothing you need to add. There's no special elixir, that's going to make it better. Right. And I know in the kind of the natural health biohacking space, we're all about like stacking all these biohacks, but really the great thing about this is you don't need to do that. You just follow the program. So think about it as simpler, the simpler, the better. I think that's key. Now, really good question. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I was looking in the Q&A. So there's a really good question from Christy asking, after watching most of the summit, still don't understand the difference between ordinary fasting and the fasting mimicking diet. She was mostly talking regarding muscle building. What do you have as an answer to that?
From a muscle building perspective. So ordinary fasting, that's kind of a nuanced question there, like, because that could be intermittent fasting, could be like water fasting, something along those lines, right? Well, the fasting mimicking diet, obviously you're getting nutrients into your body, but you're not triggering those nutrient sensor pathways. So it's a nourished fast, whereas water fasting, you have much greater risk of losing muscle mass because you're not getting the nourishment. Now you do get human growth hormone. A lot of people think they just wither away, right? I used to think that I'm just going to wither away if I water fast. It's not the case, because you do get an elevation in human growth hormone, which will help preserve lean body mass. But because you are taking in no nutrients, a lot of people do end up losing some muscle mass, but you're not just going to wither away. There's many people who've done water fasts. They feel great. They don't lose a whole lot of lean body mass. The loss that they do have is a lot of times water that comes with the glycogen, right? So when you have glycogen in your muscles, it also carries water. When you burn the glycogen, water goes out with it. So maybe some water, but that's about it. but obviously greater propensity for muscle loss with a long water fast than there would be with a nourished fast like the fasting mimicking diet. So good question. I know another common question I get is for menstruating females. Okay, and this is key. I'm glad I found this question. This is key because menstruating females, there is a specific time in the month where it's better to do the Prolon 5-day fast. So for men, you pretty much should do it at any time, right? Your hormones are not going to be impacted. You do it anytime that's most convenient for you. For most postmenopausal women, that's the case as well. If you're under a tremendous amount of stress, right? You're working 18-hour days, probably not a good time to do it. Okay. But other than that, you pretty much can do it any time of the month. But for a menstruating female, the best time to do it is right after menstruation. So when you start to bleed, day one, when the menstrual cycle starts, the bleeding takes place. You don't need as much estrogen and progesterone. And fasting has a hormetic stress effect on the body, meaning that it's a stressor, but it's a stressor that actually makes us stronger and more resilient. But we will release stress hormones. Stress hormones compete with sex hormones. And so there are certain times, like the week before the menstrual cycle starts, we need higher amounts of progesterone. And if we have high cortisol, high stress hormones, because we're doing a fast, it's probably not the best time. So my recommendation is you do it when your menstrual cycle starts, like sometime in the first, let's say 10 to 12 days of your menstrual cycle, roughly around ovulation. You need more hormones. That's day 14. You could do it after ovulation if you're tracking your menstrual cycle. But I would tell you that the easiest thing is, okay, menstrual cycle started. I want to do it within the next 10 days, right? If your menstrual cycle starts within the next 10 days, perfect time to do it. Okay. So really good question as far as that goes. Brett, are you seeing anything else there that's jumping out?
Yeah, let me see here. Does yeah, I guess a lot of questions that wanted to compare the fasting mimicking diet to the water fasting. I do have to say, I just personally completed the 5-day fasting mimicking diet, and in the past, I have done the water fasting diet, and let me tell you, the fasting mimicking diet was a lot easier. That was definitely what I found, and I believe that's the majority of the research is when you're only drinking water and you're not getting any calories, it's really hard.
Yeah.
But I found that the fasting mimicking diet was not that hard. It was kind of what you would expect, like you feel a little bit uncomfortable, and then you have one of their herbal teas that actually really is satisfying. And found that I not only made it through the 5 days, I had a really great sense of accomplishment afterwards. Lost 7 pounds, feel great. So I'm personally a big believer. um,
Yeah, love that, Brett. Yeah, what I would say, with the water fast is we just really don't have research on extended water fasts. We don't have enough research, that's for sure. And the research we have is not really high quality. So all of our ideas about what's happening on an extended water fast are really hypothesis. And there's nothing wrong with that. We can have a hypothesis, but it's just not grounded in real peer-reviewed research. And the idea is that we're getting deeper levels of autophagy, deeper levels of stem cells. And that may be the case, but again, it's not backed up by science at this time, at least, because nobody's funding, water fasting. There's no profit to be made on that. And the other thing is the compliance level is low, right? With water fasting, people that want to water fast, especially doing it at home on your own, very low compliance. And there's safety issues with it. Whereas, to me, the most remarkable research out of all the research I showed you was a 96.3% compliance rate. Like any sort of health modality, if you get
yeah,
96% of people being compliant, following through with that, that's remarkable. And especially something that is like a real big lifestyle change, like changing your food, right? So, and I think it's probably because of the simplicity of it and the fact that you're going through this nourished, and therefore you're having less of these unwanted side effects, which helps you feel better as you're going through it. And
there
Prolon
was
does a
a
great job with their community element too, right? There's a
oh
community element of it.
yeah, you know what? Actually, we didn't even get to that. There's a huge community of people all fasting together. That was a big part of why we brought the summit together, as a matter of fact, because we had over 55,000 people attend the summit. And a big benefit to the Prolon fast that you get is a community of people where you get to do the fast with hundreds, if not thousands of people at the same time. You all come together virtually, and it really helps, provides a great support network. One other question, I saw a few that are similar. Somebody asked, can I add coffee creamer that might have a little bit of sugar in it? And some of the fasting bars might have a little bit of sugar in it. Is a little bit of sugar okay for the fast and or the fasting mimicking diet?
Here's what I would say is that just like I talked about in the presentation, just stay in the box. Just keep it as simple as possible and stay in the box. For 5 days, you can do it. A lot of times people want creamer or stevia, in their coffee, things like that. This is part of reset. I talked about resetting your dopamine levels, right? You're going to get a dopamine reset, which is actually going to help you enjoy your coffee creamer and your stevia even more when you come out of this, right? And then you can really enjoy it and you're going to have better experience with it during those other 25 days of the month. So I would just recommend staying in the box.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's about it. That's really about all we have time
Yep.
for. Just want to give a really big thanks to Dr. Jockers. What a great presentation. I learned a ton, and I thought I knew a lot of this stuff. So this was fantastic. Really, really appreciate you. Thanks to Prolon, and thanks to all the people who attended today. Any last words of wisdoms for us before we sign off?
Absolutely. Well, guys, as I mentioned earlier, fasting is the most powerful, inexpensive, or it's the most ancient, inexpensive, and powerful healing strategy known to mankind. So embrace a fasting lifestyle. Find a why that makes you cry, that can help inspire you to greatness in your life and inspire you to following something like, the 5 day fasting mimicking diet. Take advantage of this special offer and get plugged into the community that Prolon has. If you do that, I think you're going to have great results, great success, and look forward to hearing about your testimonial utilizing this. So with that said, be blessed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jockers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brett.